Good evening. You're watching the Workers' Party of Britain live Tuesday show, and tonight we'll be discussing green capitalism. Is it possible? Now, there are many subjects we've been discussing in recent weeks, and this is something that is perennially an issue that needs to be discussed and dealt with. Is it possible to live a healthy, clean, sustainable life? Can society be made environmentally friendly under capitalism? Well, tonight to discuss that, we have Tess Delaney, member of the Workers' Party of Britain, who has a lot of experience trying to live a sustainable, environmentally friendly life, and George Galloway, leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, where we'll be discussing this in detail. So without further ado, over to you, Tess.
Thanks, Dan. Can you hear me? All good.
Loud and clear.
Okay, good. Welcome to everybody, members, non-members. I'd like to start tonight, firstly, by talking about Extinction Rebellion. I wrote an article the other day and regarding Extinction Rebellion. And what I want to say first is that I know some of them personally. They're quite active in Pembrokeshire. And the people I know in Extinction Rebellion, they're kind people, they're nice people, they're compassionate people. And I don't want to diss them in any way. They do some good things, they plant trees, they mean well, they're up, they're out of bed, they're dressed, they're doing something and they're out there. So as much as I feel that their hearts are in the right place, I feel like, unfortunately, they're kind of barking up the wrong tree. So I was young once, and I used to drive my friends crazy with videos of hunt saboteurs and things like that in the 5th year and 6th form. Some of them are watching tonight and will remember it well and be mithering them. And when you're young and idealistic and you're looking to save the world, you'll get involved in all sorts of things as a young idealistic person. And I feel that they're young and they're keen, most of them, and the only problem is they've got no real guidance. This Extinction Rebellion thing has become a big movement and perhaps a big fashion. The leaders are in some circles seen as a little suspect, but I think the followers in themselves are good people. So it might seem weird for somebody like me to not really agree with what's going on with this Extinction Rebellion, in that I live off grid. I have done for 5 years. I'm going into my 6th winter now, living off grid. I did apply for planning permission to live on my land under the One Planet Development Scheme, OPD, which only runs in Wales at the moment, unfortunately. But it's been going for 10 years and there have been 34 successful applicants at OPD. So it's not easy, obviously. I tried, and I was reminded constantly over the year and a half that it took me to go through the process of something that one of the planning officers in Carmarthenshire said with another application: we can't have every Tom, Dick and Harry living in the countryside. So to them, it's they don't want hippies or working class people. You know, I bought my land cheap, hoping that I could achieve a dream and live off grid and grow my own food. For OPD, you have to have a business proposition to show that you're worthy enough to live on your land. And I was going to open a tree nursery, which they refused, which, given the fashion for planting trees at the moment, seems absurd in itself. But essentially it was, my neighbours decided between them that they didn't want me building next to them, and they were able to complain, object, and the council listened to them, because that's kind of the way things go. They're not going to let every Tom, Dick and Harry live in the countryside. So I have to leave here in February. I'm being enforced off my own land that I own. I've got a workshop, a polytunnel and a goat house, which all have to go. The goats, I don't eat the goats. They're not for food. Some people think they are, but they're not. They're my brash cutters. They look after the land. They keep the marsh grass down. They keep the brambles down. They walk in amongst the trees and they eat all the grass, and they do, that's their job. And if I want to clear marsh grass and reseed it, then I send horses in to trample it all down. So the land is all looked after really organically. I've got ducks that eat all the slugs. I don't use slug pellets. I don't use pesticides. I don't use anything like that. I don't use any food for plants that isn't made of natural things like nettles and stuff like that. So, but I have to take all of this down, and I have to return to the capitalist world that I was trying to escape from unsuccessfully. And I have to return to that, and that's just the way things are. And the reason that's the way things are is no other reason than capitalism. We're living under capitalism, and that's just the way it is. Now, under capitalism, there should be ways of doing things like green social housing, for instance. I built my little cabin. It cost hardly anything. It's made all of recycled materials and tree surgery waste. So there's no reason at all why small dwellings can't be built on land that's just outside existing towns locally, like Haverfordwest, Milford Haven. There's lots of room around them, lots of farmland that's not being used because subsidies require that it isn't, because grain is imported from abroad or something like that. So farmers around here get given subsidies. Please don't grow anything on your land. Here's 50 grand. And so the farmers are happy and the government are happy. They've got less British grain to store because it's cheaper to import it because of globalization and because of capitalism. And the thing is with ethical choices, they're really expensive. You know, organic food is more expensive. And you know, sometimes you wonder, you're there sort of working hard to grow your own veg when you could just go down Aldi and get anything you want for 39p. So there is that. But at least you know that you've got the skills should anything happen. Should the apocalypse come, I know how to grow food. Many people don't. And that's just one of those facts of life. It's a skill that we've lost due to things like mechanized farming and big scale farming replacing the small holdings. So the irony of this is, you know, we're in capitalism. Under slavery, feudalism, I would have been able to perhaps fight my planning officer to the death in a duel or, you know, have a gladiatorial combat or something. And if I'd won, I'd win the right to stay on my land, to live on my land. But under capitalism, there's no chance of even doing that. I can't even do that. There is no way, really, unless you're really, really, really lucky and fortunate to buy your freedom within the capitalist system. It's not easy to escape any system, but it's really impossible to escape capitalism because the ruling class will always do what suits them at the time. For instance, the enclosures, when they took away all the common land and they allocated it all to landowners and whatever, they put up all these hedgerows. You can tell which ones they are because they're all hawthorn. They're all sort of mostly pure hawthorn. But then years later, when it suited them and mechanized farming came in, they went around and they grubbed out all these hedgerows, which, you know, for 100 years or so had been really good habitat for birds. And then you get the edges of hedgerows where the wildflowers grow. And mechanized farming then comes in and uses all its pesticides and the wildflowers are gone. And then the bees are gone. And once the bees are gone, then we're gone. So last May, Pembrokeshire County Council, Pembrokeshire where I live, they declared a climate emergency on May the 9th. And we all thought, well, hey, we're going to do something. But it turns out that they're not going to do anything and they're going to refuse OPDs. I'm not the only one who's been refused. Some have been passed, some haven't. There's another one up the road from me that's been refused. There's another one that's still waiting more than a year. Planning applications usually take 8 weeks, but they've been waiting for more than a year. So in capitalism, all we can do is small projects. We can plant trees and everyone talks about the benefits of that, even though the biggest carbon sink really is the ocean. But we can help, we can plant trees. I've planted thousands of trees. They say I can't have a tree nursery, but I've got one anyway. I just made it anyway. So even if I can't live here, I can still make a tree nursery. I've got to take all my stuff down, but that means then that I've got to drive somewhere else to live, which means I'm using diesel, which is absurd. It's why not just be able to live on your own land, house yourself, because there's no social housing. I've been told there's no social housing available. The rents locally are all sky high, although there are loads of empty houses everywhere you look. Within a mile of me, there are about 5 empty farmhouses. They're just land banked by the ruling class property owning farmers that own all the land, and that's just the way it is. And they can't even sell bits of their land off to people doing OPD like they have been. You know, farming has to diversify now because farming in Britain is kind of going downhill all the time anyway. And the farmers had a little opportunity there, sell little bits of land to the young'uns who are coming up, want to live sustainably, but that's going to be closed to them soon, I think. And you get climate change deniers, of course you do. And whatever's happening, whether it's solar flares or whether it's because of us, we have to respect our planet more. We can't go around belching smoke all over the place and using jets all over the place. And ironically, planes are falling out of favor now, but the rich people are all going and buying private jets. So there's less planes in the sky, but that won't affect the billionaire classes, the shareholders, the ones who make all the decisions. And this is why we can never have green capitalism, because you can't have a green revolution until you've had a red revolution, as far as I'm concerned. All you can do is pander and pay lip service to the masses with Shell and Exxon Mobil, perhaps having little green logos and putting up some wind turbines to keep everyone happy, apart from the people who hate the wind turbines, of which there are many, of course. And so, again, we're arguing over climate change like we're arguing over everything else. And all we really need to do is get together with people like Extinction Rebellion, show them that they were wrong when they stated last week, someone put up a banner, socialism or extinction, and then someone retracted that. But I think they were the first time they were right, that when they said socialism or extinction, that's right, because that's essentially how it works. If we don't get socialism, then everything will continue to be run for profit, for shareholder benefit, and we'll never get anywhere. Jyoti, our deputy leader, she says there are no individual solutions to social problems, and that's true. I'm living proof of that. I tried to escape the system. I was unsuccessful. I've got to get back in there. But workers need socialism. Extinction Rebellion need to stop alienating workers by stopping them getting to work. And I'll leave you with one little funny story. The last protest they did around here, where they stopped the workers going to Valero, the refinery down the road. The Pembrokeshire answer to that was to go and get a digger, cut down the hedge, make a little track up the field, pass the protesters, go through the hedge the other end, and then just keep going, you know? So all they achieved that day was getting 2 big bits of hedgerow knocked down during bird nesting season, which was the biggest irony of all. So I hope we can all learn to work together. I hope the left and everyone can all learn that we're in this together. We're the workers, and the ruling class will never do what's best for us or for the environment or for where we live or for what's best for the animals or the insects or the bees and all the processes we rely on. They'll never do what's best. We're the only ones who can do that. So we've all got to get together, fight together. Okay? So thank you, Joel. Thanks for listening. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, George. Cheers.
Thank you, Tess. I think that was beautifully put, and I think it's really good that you can use what is essentially a personal tragedy, because it is someone trying to live a sustainable, healthy life in the way that they want, and being stopped from doing that for no good reason except essentially greed is a tragedy. But I'm glad that you're able to use that to so eloquently express some of the problems that face our society. And I think you're absolutely right when you say that, you know, whatever people think of climate change, it makes sense for us to respect the world we live in, to have a nice environment for ourselves and future generations to live in. We want to live in a nice, fresh, diverse world, and we can't do that if we're constantly polluting and destroying it and living unsustainably. Without any further ado, we'll come to George, who will express the Workers' Party's thoughts further on this. Over to you, George. I don't think you're unmuted there, George. Oh, well, we'll come to George in just a second, hopefully. But you can also find Tess's writing on postcards from the hedge.car.blog and a book called No PD or Noped, How to Epically Fail at One Planet Development. And you can read her thoughts on various issues there and find out why we're so proud to have her as a member. Just checking now, seeing if we're able to get audio from George.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear, George. No worries. Go ahead.
All right. I'm very sorry about that. And thanks very much indeed to Tess for setting the scene with what was a wonderfully illuminating collection of stories. In fact, the whole case in her short introduction based on her own experience. I shall only expand, if you like, on the platform that she constructed there, because in a sense she illustrated the less than constructive, the often counterproductive role of identity politics in the grand scheme of things. Because Extinction Rebellion, although they would not like to admit it, are essentially practicing identity politics, that an individual can change the world, that you can be anything that you want to be. All these individualistic nostrums are present in the rather odd, often, a collection of activities that Extinction Rebellion are involved in, whether it's dancing outside Buckingham Palace, which I saw this week, not very well either, or collecting coronavirus in bags. It's all ethereal, otherworldly, and absolutely certain to alienate the working class. And Tess just described how in her area the activities of Extinction Rebellion were concentrated on stopping workers getting to work. What good can possibly come of that? What movement can be built out of that? If you alienate the working class and the workers and their families suffer as a result of your ballet or your kite flying or whatever the pursuits are today, then you're going to increasingly divide the very people that you need to unite with. And I thought the Extinction Rebellion leadership's explicit rejection of socialism in the row about the banner was itself also wonderfully illuminating. Rosa Luxemburg's polarity, dichotomy, socialism or barbarism, is as true today as it was when she wrote it. And socialism or extinction is a perfect dichotomy. And the fact that the movement that gets all this attention and all this money, much of it from capitalist corporations, tore it down and explicitly rejected it, tells us much of what we need to know. Why was Rosa Luxemburg right, and why was the banner that was torn down on the ER demonstration, why was that right? And both of these are right because it is self-evident that there will be neither peace nor plenty under capitalism, and there can be, no matter how much green lipstick you put on it, no matter how much green logos or how many Extinction Rebellion ballet dances you sponsor, the purpose of capitalism does not change, cannot change. It is intrinsic to the capitalist model that it seeks the highest return of profit on its investment. Indeed, it has a fiduciary duty to do so if it has shareholders, which most corporations do. It has a duty, it has a responsibility. Above all, it has in its DNA the need to maximize the rate of profit by exploiting all the factors involved in the production of your goods, your services, in your business. That ought to be ABC. And it doesn't matter if the capitalist has long hair or short, if he lives on a Caribbean island and calls himself a hippie or not. The ineluctable logic of capitalism is exploitation. Exploitation of man and woman and their labor, exploitation of the natural resources of the world, get them as cheaply as you can, sell them as expensively as you can, the exploitation of the land itself on which we live, and frankly, if they could bottle the air that we breathe and sell it to us, they very definitely would. I've lived long enough to see the rain that teems down on us become a commodity in itself. If you'd told me at the age of 20 that there would be a giant industry in selling bottles of water to people, I would not have believed you. But you can, of course, create markets out of nothing. So a system which is based on exploitation of all of the things that you are putting together in your business, in your industry, cannot possibly save the planet. Now, who's responsible for the ailing planet is, of course, a contentious, a controversial subject. That there is climate change going on is absolutely incontestable. The proportion of responsibility that we should attribute to human behavior in that climate change is more problematic. I was just reading today that the Sahara Desert was once a thriving and exceedingly green forest, and now it's a desert, and it became a desert nothing to do with the activity of humans. It became a desert because of natural climatic change. I've been watching it because it's a subject in which I'm interested. The Discovery Channel series on the changes that are constantly taking place in the universe, and the new knowledge that we have of black holes and so on. And by the end of these programs, I'm convinced more than I was that there are many things at work in the universe, many forces at work in the universe, and we're not going to necessarily be able to avoid the consequences of any or all of them. But Dan put it well during the handover there. We should live a green life because it's a better life, not because it will necessarily guarantee that we will avoid cataclysm, that we will avoid the consequences of the sun burning out all of its fuel, or any of the other things that will happen many thousands, maybe millions of years from now, but because it will be a better life. for ourselves and for our children. I gave an example last time I spoke about this, about plastic. Plastic is an infernal and existential challenge and threat to much of human life, and certainly animal life, and certainly marine life. The oceans are chock full of plastic. We should get rid of plastic because our lives and the lives of the ecosystem will be greatly enhanced if we get rid of plastic. We can begin that task ourselves. We can stop using plastic or choose paper over plastic. We can make individual choices, but just to demonstrate to our children the importance of that. And we do that. We try to do that. My children sometimes cry to be allowed plastic junk, which is what I describe it as. They can cry all they like. They never will be allowed. But the big change that we need is to have an economy that acts in the interests, whose purpose is to act in the interests of the people, of the society, and of future generations. That kind of society can only be a socialist society. Capitalism is interested only in me and now, not us and always. That's the nature of the beast. The scorpion stings because it's a scorpion. The capitalist behaves as the capitalist behaves because he or she is a capitalist. So we, of course, have learned many things. I have said to you before, I like factories, I like smokestacks, I like mines and mills. But we know now more than we did before, when I was working in some of those, that many of the industrial practices that we had in the past have been harmful, have polluted the environment to the cost of all of us. Someone told me yesterday that the sandblasting of clothes, garments in the garment industry comes with the additional cost of the sandblaster almost certainly contracting silicosis. So you see, there's always a worker somewhere paying for the things which capitalism produces for exploitation. And we are now better informed and must become ever more informed about what these actual costs to the environment, to other people, of the choices that we make. But the only way that we are going to meaningfully change all of this, even if we all stop buying plastic toys, is to have a planned economy, where a democratic economy, where the interests of the people, all of the people, are guiding the economy. And they are doing so through an elected and accountable popular administration, political force that has been elected so to do, is taking charge of the economy with the interests of the people and the environment in mind. That's the only way that you could really achieve that. And so why are we hostile to these green formations? Of course, as Tess said, there will be many followers that are merely misguided, can be won back or can be converted from what are essentially nihilistic, individualistic, anarchistic, personal choices as a substitute for a political strategy, for a revolutionary political strategy such as socialism. Of course, we will never give up trying to persuade them or anybody else of the correctness of our stance. Our hostility to the formations is because they are leading people up a blind alley. Whether that's in the Green Party, ask the refuse workers in Brighton what it's like to work for a Green Party council, but be prepared for some bad language. Ask the Green Party's MP in Westminster, who spent the last 4.5 years trying to subvert, the only way to put it, destroy, sabotage the democratic wishes of the majority of the British people over Brexit. All Green paraphernalia was cast aside, and Caroline Lucas became effectively a lieutenant of the Remainiac camp, the Remainiacs, the FBPE lunatics, and all of that. That's the truth of the matter. In Ireland, the Green Party has just put in power the most monstrous construct ever seen, actually, in Irish politics, or maybe any politics anywhere. They have put the discredited Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil coalition into power, even though they all lost the election to Sinn Féin, which by any standards had won the election and had a democratic mandate to govern in Dublin. They have been cheated, robbed of that possibility by our old friends, the Green Party. In Germany, the Greens, in France, the Greens invariably play a pernicious role, which always seems to end up propping up parties, people, and things which are against the interests of the working class, which are for the interests of the capitalist class. So I look at these people as merely capitalism wearing green lipstick. It changes nothing. They will change nothing. And insofar as they attract activists, then all the time that these activists spend with them will have been wasted. As Tess put it, our flag is red, not green. But if it's genuinely red, then it has to be informed by, guided by green principles of sustainability, of good health and welfare for the people and the planet. I'm increasingly thinking about and concerned about the planet because I'm getting older, but because I have very young children. It is a preoccupation of mine, what kind of world we're going to leave for our children. But the biggest single thing we could do to transform the prospects for our children, grandchildren, and for the hope of the planet would be socialism. Socialism is the cause of labor. The cause of labor is the hope of the world. That was true 120 years ago. It's still true today. Thanks very much, Dan.
Beautifully put, George. Thank you very much. And thank you again to Tess. So I hope that's laid out some of the thoughts and ideas that we have in the Workers' Party of Britain regarding the environment, climate change, sustainable development. If you want to learn more about the Workers' Party, come and discuss these things. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Workers' Party GB. Find us on Facebook, Workers' Party of Britain. You can find us on workerspartybritain.org. And if you sign up, you're more than welcome to join in with our members' meetings where we discuss and formulate policy. So do the right thing, get in touch and join us to make a real change in the world. Thank you and good night.